It's no secret that history has not been kind to women. They have been treated as property, denied the right to vote until 1920, and continue to earn less than men for equal work. But the injustices go even deeper when examining the cruel punishments inflicted on women throughout the ages. Shockingly, in some parts of the world, such practices still persist today. From the agonies of foot binding to the constrictive torment of corsets, here are 9 of the most brutal methods of torture women have endured throughout history. Corsets. Similar to foot binding, corsets have historically been used to enforce unrealistic beauty ideals on women. These garments were designed to mold and shape the torso into a coveted silhouette, typically an hourglass figure with a smaller waist and enhanced bust. While both men and women have worn corsets, they became particularly associated with women's fashion. The history of corsets stretches back approximately 500 years, with their earliest references as stays appearing in the 16th century. Notably, during Catherine de' Medici's reign in France from 1547 to 1559, women with thicker waists were banned from attending the court. It wasn't until the 18th century that corsets gained widespread popularity as undergarments. Though some women still wear modern versions of corsets, today's designs typically do not aim for permanent body modification as their predecessors did. Unfortunately, tightly laced corsets could lead to severe health complications. They restricted breathing, leading to faintness, and prolonged use could cause rib deformities. Corsets could also compress internal organs, resulting in digestive issues and weakened back muscles over time. To avoid these risks, achieving a slim waist can be accomplished through targeted exercises and a balanced diet. Interestingly, specially designed corsets now provide lumbar support for individuals with spinal issues, demonstrating that when used correctly, these garments can be beneficial. However, traditional corsets remain a reminder of how women's bodies have historically been manipulated in the name of beauty. The iron chair. The iron chair stands as one of the most gruesome forms of torture, using both fire and sharp instruments to inflict severe pain. Unlike other punishment methods, this one involved a chair specifically designed with an array of razor-sharp spikes, often between 500 and 1,500 of them. Although both genders could be subjected to this horrific punishment, it primarily targeted women for various alleged offenses. Victims were forced to sit on this cruel chair for hours, leading to eventual death from blood loss. In addition, compartments underneath the chair were ignited, roasting the victims slowly. The iron chair was frequently used for crimes such as adultery, witchcraft, and murder, especially during the Middle Ages, and persisted in Europe until the late 1800s. A similar instrument was reportedly employed in China between 1701 and 1900, constructed from wood and fitted with 12 steel blades strategically positioned in the arm, back, footrests, and seat. Throughout history, this torture method was also utilized to extract confessions, often forcing the accused to witness the torment of others. In recent reports, this brutal practice has been noted in North Korean prisons, indicating that the iron chair remains a tool of oppression even today. Catherine's wheel. The Catherine's wheel is a notorious instrument of torture named after St. Catherine of Alexandria, who became a martyr during the persecution of Christians under Emperor Maxinius. According to legend, when St. Catherine was sentenced to death, she touched the wheel, causing it to break. Ultimately, she met her end by beheading, but her story continues to resonate through history. Intriguingly, Joan of Arc claimed to have heard the voice of St. Catherine, inspiring her journey toward martyrdom nearly 1,000 years later. Artistic depictions of St. Catherine, such as Michelangelo's portrayal, often include the broken wheel or a miniature version in her hands, along with the sword used to execute her. The wheel itself could be fitted with spikes, with victims strapped to its frame. In this horrific punishment, clubs or other instruments were used to smash their limbs, resulting in a torturous and agonizing death that could take days. While the Catherine's wheel saw use throughout Europe, it was also utilized in colonial America, where it claimed the lives of several enslaved individuals. Beyond its gruesome history, the wheel has been referenced in various cultural contexts, including songs, novels, and gymnastics terminology. Additionally, many organizations, individuals, and locations feature Catherine wheels in their coats of arms, symbolizing their complex legacy. The Breast Ripper. The Breast Ripper was a horrifying device specifically designed to inflict excruciating pain on women. As the name suggests, this tool was used to maim female victims, often including heated prongs to heighten the agony, also known as the iron spider, or simply the spider. The Breast Ripper consisted of 4 claws engineered to tear apart the flesh. Women subjected to this brutal punishment were frequently unmarried mothers or those accused of adultery. The primary aim of this gruesome method was not only to inflict intense suffering, but also to leave permanent marks on the victims' bodies. This device epitomized the extreme measures taken to punish women for their perceived transgressions, reinforcing the societal norms that dictated women's behavior at the time. The psychological trauma endured by those who experienced the Breast Ripper was immense, serving as a harsh reminder of the brutal realities faced by women throughout history. The use of the Breast Ripper illustrates the broader context of misogyny and violence against women in various societies. During the Middle Ages, societal views on female shit were steeped in shame and repression, leading to severe punishments for women who defied conventions. Adultery was often met with public condemnation and brutal retribution, while unmarried mothers faced harsh societal stigma. The Breast Ripper was one of many instruments of torture designed to assert control over women's bodies and reinforce patriarchal values. While accounts of the Breast Ripper and its use are primarily rooted in historical texts and folklore, they reflect real practices of the time that aim to instill fear and maintain social order. In addition to physical punishment, women could face other forms of torture, such as being burned at the stake, hanged, or subjected to public shaming. These punitive measures contributed to a culture of silence, where women were discouraged from speaking out against their abusers or seeking justice. Moreover, the legacy of such devices continues to resonate in contemporary discussions about gender-based violence and the treatment of women. Awareness campaigns and advocacy groups focus on the historical injustices faced by women, urging society to recognize and confront the ongoing discrimination and violence that persists today. Efforts to challenge misogyny and empower women are critical in dismantling the remnants of these oppressive structures. In modern times, the horror of instruments like the Breast Ripper serves as a potent reminder of the past, emphasizing the need for continued vigilance against gender-based violence. Education plays a vital role in transforming societal attitudes, encouraging empathy, and promoting equality. By examining history and acknowledging the suffering of victims, we can foster a more compassionate society committed to protecting the rights and dignity of all individuals. In conclusion, the Breast Ripper stands as a grim symbol of the extreme measures taken against women throughout history, reflecting broader patterns of violence and control. Recognizing the past is essential in ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated and that the rights of women are upheld in the present and future. Stoning. Stoning is a punishment that is both straightforward and brutal. It involves a crowd throwing stones at an individual until they succumb to their injuries. Various religious texts have historically advocated for this form of punishment for a range of offenses. These include severe violations such as breaking the Sabbath, cursing God, rebelling against one's parents, engaging in incest, or committing adultery. Although many people associate stoning with ancient history, it remains a contemporary punishment in certain nations. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Sudan, Somalia, and Yemen still impose this barbaric practice. International law, however, unequivocally condemns stoning. The United Nations has highlighted it as a form of torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment. Rupert Colville, a spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, emphasized that such acts violate human rights and are explicitly prohibited. He also pointed out that women disproportionately face stoning compared to men, primarily due to pervasive discrimination and negative stereotypes that persist in judicial systems and law enforcement. The practice of stoning not only raises ethical concerns, but also reflects deep-rooted societal issues. In many cultures where stoning is practiced, it is often used as a means to control women's behavior and enforce patriarchal norms. For instance, women accused of adultery may be punished severely, while men in similar situations often evade justice or face significantly lighter penalties. This gender disparity underscores the systemic inequalities embedded within the legal frameworks of these countries. Historically, the origins of stoning can be traced back to ancient legal codes, including the Babylonian Code of Hammurabi and various texts in the Hebrew Bible. The practice has evolved over time and is sometimes justified by interpretations of religious doctrine. However, many scholars argue that these texts must be contextualized within their historical settings rather than applied literally in modern society. Despite international condemnation, stoning remains a grim reality for many individuals, particularly in rural or conservative areas where traditional beliefs strongly influence legal practices. Advocacy groups such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the injustices of stoning and to pressure governments to abolish the practice. Their efforts focus on highlighting personal stories of survivors and victims, aiming to foster empathy and drive change. Furthermore, the global community has seen some positive developments. Some countries have taken steps to reform their judicial systems and eliminate stoning as a punishment. For instance, the Moroccan government has proposed reforms to its family law, which has historically enforced harsh penalties for moral offenses. These changes reflect a growing recognition of human rights and the need for more equitable legal frameworks. In conclusion, the issue of stoning serves as a stark reminder of the ongoing struggle for human rights and the need for continued advocacy against practices rooted in discrimination and violence. As societies evolve, the hope is that all forms of inhumane punishment, including stoning, will be relegated to the annals of history, paving the way for a future grounded in dignity and respect for all individuals. The Republican marriage. The concept of a Republican marriage is as disturbing as it is peculiar. This punishment involves stripping a man and woman of their clothes, binding them together, and then tossing them into a river. Some accounts suggest that the condemned couple was made to remain naked and tied for an extended period, adding to their humiliation and shame. This punishment was frequently inflicted on individuals such as priests and nuns during the chaotic period of the French Revolution from 1793 to 1794 under orders from Jean-Baptiste Carrier. Yet, despite its notoriety, many historians express skepticism about the actual occurrence of Republican marriages. Reports from France during this time mention such events, but no verifiable accounts have ever surfaced. The lack of concrete evidence led the assistant prosecutor at Carrier's trial to dismiss accusations of Republican marriages as unreliable. Regardless, the evidence surrounding the Reign of Terror was sufficient for Carrier and several of his associates to receive death sentences. The term Republican marriage itself appears to mock traditional secular marriages. Literature from that era describes how parents were appalled when their children chose to plan a Republican wedding instead of one sanctioned by the church. The practice of Republican marriage symbolizes the extreme measures taken during the Reign of Terror, where revolutionary leaders sought to eradicate the influence of the church and traditional societal norms. The revolutionaries viewed such acts as necessary to promote a new order based on reason and secularism. By publicly humiliating individuals who represented the old regime, they aimed to demonstrate their commitment to revolutionary ideals and challenge the status quo. Additionally, the notion of Republican marriages highlights the broader atmosphere of fear and suspicion that characterized the period. The revolutionary government was deeply paranoid about counter-revolutionary activities, leading to widespread persecution of those deemed enemies of the state. People often faced brutal punishments for perceived affiliations with the old regime, and the concept of republican marriage became a form of public spectacle and control. Despite the ambiguity surrounding actual instances of republican marriages, the legacy of these punitive measures lives on in discussions about the nature of power and oppression. They serve as reminders of how political movements can lead to the dehumanization of individuals in the name of ideology. Moreover, the term republican marriage has evolved in modern discourse to represent the intersection of politics, identity, and social norms. Scholars and commentators often use the term to discuss contemporary issues related to marriage, state control, and individual autonomy, reflecting on how the lessons from history continue to resonate today. The discourse around republican marriages also connects to larger conversations about the evolution of marriage itself. The tension between state-sanctioned unions and personal choices has persisted throughout history, manifesting in various forms across different cultures. As societies grapple with issues of marriage equality and individual rights, the echoes of past practices like republican marriage remind us of the importance of protecting personal freedoms against oppressive regimes. In conclusion, the concept of republican marriage is a haunting reminder of the extremes of revolutionary fervor, the potential for societal breakdown under political ideologies, and the enduring struggle for personal autonomy. The Spanish donkey. The Spanish donkey, also referred to as the wooden horse, chevalier, cavaletto, squire's bale, and union mule, was a notorious device employed during the medieval era and notably during the Spanish Inquisition. Similar methods were also utilized on freed slaves after the Civil War. This torturous contraption featured a triangular wedge supported by 2 or 4 legs. The victim, typically a woman, was forced to straddle the sharp end, which sometimes had spikes, resulting in severe injury to her lower body. Often, those subjected to this form of punishment found themselves unable to walk without excruciating pain. In tragic cases, a victim could die from blood loss. Women perceived to have committed greater offenses would have weights added to their legs, causing damage to their bones and internal organs. Once bound to the device, victims were often paraded through town before facing further humiliation, including being tarred and feathered. The Spanish donkey was often employed as a method of psychological torture as much as physical. The humiliation of being displayed in public was designed to serve as a deterrent to others who might consider challenging societal norms or authority. This method was particularly common during the Spanish Inquisition, where accusations of heresy, witchcraft, and infidelity could lead to brutal punishments. The Inquisition sought not only to punish, but also to intimidate, using such devices to reinforce the power of the church and state over individuals. Moreover, this device highlights the gendered nature of punishment during this period. Women were disproportionately targeted and often faced harsher penalties for offenses that might have been overlooked in men. Accusations of witchcraft, for example, frequently led to violent retribution, including the use of the Spanish donkey. This reflects broader societal views that demonized female sexuality and autonomy, making women easy scapegoats in times of social unrest. In the wake of the Civil War, similar methods of punishment were unfortunately applied to freed slaves in the United States. The legacy of oppression persisted as many former slaves faced violence and public humiliation, echoing the torturous practices of the past. Devices reminiscent of the Spanish donkey were used to instill fear and maintain control over a population seeking freedom and rights. Interestingly, the Spanish donkey is not solely a relic of the past. Its concept has found its way into modern discussions about torture and human rights. The study of such devices allows historians and ethicists to understand the evolution of punishment and the socio-political factors that drive it. By analyzing the use of the Spanish donkey in similar instruments, scholars can explore the historical context that allowed such cruelty to thrive and consider the implications for contemporary justice systems. Today, awareness of human rights has led to a global condemnation of torture and inhumane punishment. Educational initiatives aim to ensure that the horrors of devices like the Spanish donkey are not forgotten, but rather serve as cautionary tales. Museums and historical sites sometimes include information about these practices to educate the public about the past and advocate for a more humane future. The Spanish donkey remains a chilling symbol of cruelty in human history, reminding us of the potential for inhumanity and the importance of vigilance in safeguarding human dignity and rights. Pair of anguish. The pair of anguish, sometimes called the mouth pair, was a device that allegedly saw use in punishing women during the early modern period, spanning from 1400 to 1800. This pear-shaped metal implement consisted of segments shaped like spoons, often equipped with spikes at the ends. It could be expanded by turning a key or via a spring mechanism. The device was inserted into a woman's orifice, inflicting often irreversible damage. However, some scholars have raised doubts about the historical accuracy of its use, questioning the plausibility of such devices being employed. The true purpose of the pair remains ambiguous. An early mention of it appears in F.D. Cavalli's General Inventory of the History of Thieves, published in 1639. In that work, the invention is attributed to Captain Gachereau de Paloy, who allegedly used a mechanical gag to rob his victims. Although other historical references exist, many consider the pair of anguish more of a sensational tale than an actual method of torture. Nevertheless, numerous examples of these devices can still be found in museums today. The pair of anguish is often associated with the broader theme of punitive devices used throughout history, particularly during periods of social unrest and moral panic. Instruments of torture like the pair were often employed to instill fear and serve as a warning against defiance or nonconformity, especially toward women accused of witchcraft or adultery. Such devices reflect the patriarchal attitudes of the time, where women's bodies were often policed, and punitive measures could be brutally disproportionate. Interestingly, the actual historical context of the pair of anguish may be tied to the sensationalism of torture devices popularized in literature and folklore. Many tales circulated during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance described horrific methods of punishment, leading to a public fixation on devices like the pair. This fascination was often compounded by the burgeoning field of crime literature, where authors would embellish facts for dramatic effect. Despite the ambiguity surrounding its historical usage, the pair of anguish has become emblematic of the darker aspects of humanity's past. Its inclusion in modern horror films and literature demonstrates how such instruments of torture can evoke powerful emotional responses, serving as metaphors for control and suffering. Moreover, the pair of anguish is often included in discussions about the history of torture and punishment, drawing attention to how societies have grappled with issues of morality and justice throughout history. Today, these conversations often center on the ethical implications of punishment and the importance of human rights, reflecting a growing awareness of the need for compassion and justice in all societies. As artifacts, the pair of anguish and similar devices offer invaluable insights into the cultural attitudes of the past and serve as a reminder of the importance of historical context in understanding the evolution of societal norms and values. Burning at the stake. Burning at the stake is a method of execution with roots that extend back to ancient Babylon in the 18th century BC. This form of punishment reappeared at various times in history, notably in ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, medieval Europe, and during the Spanish Inquisition. Women were often condemned to this horrific fate due to alleged crimes, their religious beliefs, or their ethnic background. One of the most infamous figures to be executed this way was Joan of Arc. The practice persisted in colonial America. However, it should be noted that none of the women accused of witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts faced this fate. Instead, they were hanged, although the first recorded woman executed by fire in America was a servant named Maria, accused of burning down 2 houses. According to the APSI file on U.S. executions from 1608 to 2002, the last known case of death by fire in America involved another black woman in 1805. The final woman reportedly sentenced to be burned at the stake was during the Spanish Inquisition in 1826, which seems shocking given its proximity to modern history. In some instances, the condemned would have a rope tied around their necks to strangle them before the flames reached their bodies, but not all victims were so fortunate. In the case of Catherine Hayes, for example, the fire ignited prematurely, leading to a slow and agonizing death. Conversely, some condemned were given bags of gunpowder tied to their legs and arms, intending to end their lives more quickly, though this method was also unreliable due to environmental conditions. The historical context surrounding burning at the stake reveals much about societal values and fears at different times. During the Middle Ages, for instance, the act of burning was often associated with heresy and witchcraft, reflecting deep-seated fears of the unknown and a desire to maintain social order through brutal punishment. The European witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries exemplify this. Thousands of alleged witches were executed, with burning being a favored method, symbolizing purification through fire. Interestingly, some cultures viewed burning as a means of punishment and a way to protect the community. It was believed that executing witches by fire would rid society of evil influences. This rationale, however, led to many innocent lives lost, often based on flimsy evidence or hysteria. Over time, attitudes towards such executions shifted, leading to their decline. The Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century brought about new ideas about justice and human rights, challenging the morality of such brutal methods. This change in perspective ultimately contributed to the abolition of capital punishment in many parts of the world. Today, burning at the stake remains a symbol of the darkest aspects of human history, an act rooted in fear, misunderstanding, and societal control. It serves as a reminder of the importance of due process and the need to protect individual rights against unjust persecution. The legacy of this method of execution continues to prompt discussions on justice, ethics, and the consequences of societal panic. What do you think drove people to inflict these punishments on women? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time.